to you. Very nice to have so many people in the room. I know that this is a bit of a specialty topic, so we welcome people who have an interest in supporting employment for people who are living with mental health and/or substance use issues. So, good morning. So, I'm just going to do my usual introduction. And for those of you who are new to this setting, just so you know that this is supported by British Columbia Advanced Practice, and our mission is to really provide support for people with lived experience and clinicians around best and promising practice. And it was really the brainchild of Dr. Higginbottom, who you'll see on your screen. So we're very grateful to John for his vision to put together this program. Myself, Regina, you see, that happened to be in Italy in the sunshine. Of course, we're all, I think, dying for a little bit of sunshine here in British Columbia. So hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of sunshine today yourself. Very grateful to Manny Ebot, who is one of our technicians, I guess, and coordinator in the background. So thank you, Manny. To Jordan Clark, who's our technology support. So bless his heart, without him, we wouldn't be able to be so smooth. Sometimes we're a little less smooth, but without his help, we wouldn't be as smooth in terms of just providing the webinars. And then Jen, who's in the room today, Jen Kuzek, who's in the room with me today. Big thanks to Jen just for her technology support and her vision and her great ideas. And big thanks to Jen for all her work and support. So that's your little team for British Columbia Advanced Practice. So that's who you're working with. And I mentioned that this work is supported and funded by the Ministry of Health and provides leadership, education, and guidance to the mental health field to help develop and put effective evidence-based psychosocial rehabilitation practices into place. And we're very, very grateful to our instructors who generally do this work off the side of their desk with no financial remuneration. But they share their expertise, and without their help, we wouldn't be here. So we're very, very grateful to them. And the last just note on that page is just to bring to your attention that we now have 38 free high quality webinars, educational opportunities for people in the field. So thanks to all our partners for making that happen. As I say, we couldn't do this work without you. So thank you. We are also looking forward to an updated annotated bibliography. So for those of you who are students or those of you who are developing some projects, we'll have the most up-to-date research on psychosocial rehabilitation and the practices, and that is available on our website too. So we're just working on some last sections, but the most recent is January 2016. So we're just working on an updated version of that annotated bibliography. So just want to bring that to your attention. So that's advanced practice. And the purpose really is, I think I've said it, is transferring evidence-based knowledge, expert clinician consultation. So we've worked with a couple of different organizations in terms of helping them orientate towards recovery-oriented services, and done some evaluation of some services as well. Just they'd like to be able to provide some training and education events. To that, please keep tuned. We will be providing a educational session in collaboration with Fraser Health Authority and also the Mental Health Commission of Canada. So stay tuned for that. We'll advertise that ever so soon in the next week or so. And also really the work in the past is really supporting the Provincial Advisory Committee and the Community of PSR Practice with the Ministry of Health. So just this is a note about evaluation. After every session, we ask you how we're doing, what can we do better, and if you'd be interested in doing a session with and for us, please do fill out that evaluation. I promise you we read each and every one of those pieces of feedback, so your feedback is important to us. Just before I move into welcoming our guest today, I would like to say that the work of this session is supported by the Ministry of Advanced Education. So we're very grateful to them for some grant money to be able to run this session today. So a big shout out and a thank you to them. And then a big welcome to Erin Goodman, who's our primary presenter today. Also, we'll have Chris Stellar, how could I forget a stellar name? Chris Stellar, who is going to also just join the conversation at the end. So big thanks to both Erin and Chris. And Erin, I'll just do a formal introduction, and I think Chris will be able to just introduce himself as he comes in later in the session. So Erin is an occupational therapist, a kindred spirit, seeing that I'm an occupational therapist as well. She has worked in the community mental health practice for over a decade. Her mission is to support individuals with mental health challenges achieve goals related to wellness, education, and employment. She supports people to move forward to full community integration and recovery, and Erin is the current lead of the Youth and Young Adult Program, the YYAP, at Gastown Vocational Services. So we're very grateful to have her expertise with us today, and we look forward to hearing Chris a little bit later. So if we can just move to the main lecture slides. Thank you very much, Jen. And in the meantime, I'm just going to pass you over to Erin. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you for the invitation to this excellent webinar series. So as I move through the presentation, I will be referencing several recent webinars that cover different aspects of supported education and employment.
And we're just flipping to the beginning, that's why.
Supported education for youth and young adults is the topic today.
I'm just going to invite that guest. I'm so sorry, Erin. I'm stealing your thunder here.
Okay. Today we will explore practice principles, models, and key components of supported education, and also look at how combining supported education with supported employment is valuable. We'll look at some research outcomes, practice considerations, and also hear a bit about the personal journey of two of our youth clients. Our learning objectives today are to identify core components of supported education, briefly describe 5 research outcomes that demonstrate the effectiveness of supported education, explain why supported education and supported employment are complementary services, and identify 3 practice considerations for service delivery. And that's within a local context. First, a bit of background. I'm actually a relative newcomer to Gastown Vocational Services. I'm covering the lead for the youth and young adult team, who is currently our acting coordinator for a year. So actually, I'm going to invite Chris in to give us a bit of a background and description of the program.
Hello.
I can hear you, Chris.
Great, perfect. So, yeah, I'm the coordinator at Gastown Vocational Services at the moment. I'm just going to give you guys a bit of context for where we're providing supported employment. So Gastown Vocational Services is a specialized program that provides employment support and volunteer, sorry, let me find myself here. Gastown Vocational Services provides support to people who have mental health issues that need help finding employment, getting into volunteer opportunities, and to reach their educational goals. GVS uses a psychosocial rehabilitation model, which I think is quite in line with this series. So the team at Gastown Vocational Services consists of occupational therapists who provide occupational therapy services as well as case management services, job development services. We have specific job developers as well who act as job coaches and help find placements, as well as connecting with universities in some cases. We have peer support workers, a psychologist, clinical counselor, and consumer contractors. The consumer contractors are a computer instructor and a psychometrician. So a little bit more about the service. It's evolved since 1991 when it started in Gastown. We've moved east now. We're into East Van, not in Gastown anymore. And the program's evolved into 2 distinct services, the YYAP service, which Erin works in, and the adult service. So these 2 services overlap quite a bit in the type of work they do. However, the YYAP program is funded through the Ministry of Social Development, whereas the adult team is funded more through Vancouver Coastal Health, as well as the employment program at BC. So it works a little bit on a fee-for-service model. The distinction we use as to who ends up in what service is usually based on developmental milestones. So someone who's in the youth program is probably still in high school, or hasn't had their first job yet, and potentially hasn't had success entering post-secondary, or did for a very brief time. Whereas the adults tend to come with a little bit more experience. They've had a few jobs, they've maybe dabbled with some post-secondary, and yeah, it's reflected in their age. The youth team would serve people 16 to 29, and the adult team would start at about 18. The services that we provide to these people are quite flexible and independent. Usually starts with assessment. We can do psycho-vocational assessments or OT assessments. And then kind of depending on the need, we go into more specific job development services or career exploration, career counseling. There's quite a big work readiness group that happens, which is one of the hallmarks of the program. Right. As well as there's kind of the supported education through the computer courses and help getting people into programs that are going to lead to employment. So I think that's a brief kind of overview of the context of Gastown Vocational Services in which we provide supported employment. Thanks, Erin.
Okay. As Chris mentioned, many of our referrals to the Youth and Young Adult program are younger. Approximately half of the clients referred to the program are under the age of 19, so many are still in high school or taking perhaps one or two courses towards high school completion. And many of these clients want to obtain part-time employment while they're at school. Others are working entry-level jobs that want to pursue post-secondary education or skills training. So in these cases, we provide services to underemployed youth. How are we unique? Who do we serve? We covered that. So our clients are generally living in Vancouver, have a primary mental health condition or a concurrent disorder. Some have ADHD and many do have learning difficulties as well. We are unique in that we are embedded in healthcare, Vancouver Coastal Health, Mental Health and Addictions. For the last 20 years, we are specialized, as Chris mentioned. Everything we do is backed by research. And the service is flexible, responsive, and integrated. So we provide support for high school completion, post-secondary skills training, employment, career exploration, and development. And we have outreach capacity, which is a really key aspect of this program. The occupational therapists, job developers, and peer support workers are mobile, and we generally do outreach in school settings or work sites. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about different supported education models. Why do we need specialized support for mental health and wellness for young adults? And the statistics tell the tale. In BC, 1 in 5 youth experience a mental health problem or illness. It's 20% of our population. And this was referenced by Dr. Skye Barbuck when she did a webinar in February for the Youth Beat program. And this is based on research done by Senator Kirby. And why do youth and young adults require more support to succeed at work and school? This is around those developmental milestones that Chris mentioned earlier. So the onset of mental illness most commonly occurs between the ages of 15 and 21, when young people are beginning to develop their adult roles. As a result, the onset of mental illness disrupts this process, and once disrupted, it is extraordinarily difficult to recreate. This is from SAMHSA. SAMHSA, as many of you might be aware, is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in the U.S. They're a leader in evidence-based practice initiatives with a mandate to promote and implement prevention and early intervention strategies to reduce the impact of mental and substance use disorders. And in 2011, they published a series of documents outlining how to build a supported education program for mental health. So I will be referencing that throughout the webinar. What kind of support has been found to be effective for youth and young adults with mental illness? We know that education is key. Educational attainment is critical for obtaining meaningful jobs and developing social and occupational networks. Educational attainment predicts higher lifetime earnings and other positive employment outcomes in people with severe mental illness, even more strongly than in the general public. And closer to home, in a recent national survey of the recovery needs of Canadians with mental illness, 87% of young adults under the age of 30 identified that work was important to them. In the same study, only 9% indicated that they were working in any capacity. What we know is that youth or young adults with mental illness are at high risk for chronic unemployment. An overwhelming number of young people in Canada are not in school and not employed. In British Columbia alone, the youth unemployment rate is nearly double the national average. You would agree that's shocking, Regina. Yeah. So this was cited by Carolyn Turnes. She's the Regional Vice President for Starbucks Canada, and Starbucks has actually provided skills training to disadvantaged youth across Canada, and Vancouver is one of those sites, and we'll be touching on that when we get to one of our client success stories a little later on. So let's contrast supported education and employment. They obviously have some similarities. They are both aimed at helping people with psychiatric disabilities achieve their goals, either educational and employment, and the two are often tied together. What we find with both of them is that these are promising practices. The evidence is building. However, it's difficult to compare studies because there's kind of a wide variance in program models. So we need more research and replication. We know that supported education services contribute significantly to both academic success and recovery. And in conjunction with supported employment services, also contribute to improved academic and vocational outcomes for persons in recovery. So for this population of emergent adults with mental health conditions, many require both supported education and supported employment. I just want to emphasize that because that's basically what we offer at Gastown, because hand in hand, those are very effective. Practice principles of supported education as per SAMHSA: access to an education program with positive forward progress is the goal. Eligibility based on personal choice, so nobody is excluded or left behind. Supported education services begin soon after consumers express interest. Ideally, we would have no wait lists. They are integrated with treatment, offered as long as they are needed, and consumer preferences guide services. Supported education is strength-based and promotes growth and hope. Recovery is an ongoing process facilitated by meaning. Let's see how we're doing in this regard. How does supported education look on the ground? Well, we do, in fact, at Gastown, GVS, provide individualized practical assistance to clarify educational goals, find academic and training programs consistent with these goals, navigate the application process, secure appropriate financial support, and use educational supports and accommodations to help assure success in meeting academic requirements. So that's more the academic side of our service. Looking at program models and supported education, and Regina, I believe in your webinar on January 26th, you went into a lot more detail around the research base for this with Simon Davis. So I'll refer folks out there back to your excellent webinar. So when we're looking at the four primary models, what's very interesting is that Douglas College and GVS basically cover all four. So I'm going to compare and contrast them. That's great. So education and skills training can be obtained in various settings. So for our supported education initiatives at Gastown, we are also connecting people to training along with opportunities for further education. So we have many clients who need to complete high school. So we look to school boards for academic upgrading and non-credit courses. And sometimes those courses are embedded in colleges as well. Public and private post-secondary institutions. Not-for-profit agencies, which provide skills training and certification, and this is increasingly available in Lower Mainland in any case, and specialized programs and services which are embedded in mainstream institutions. These are generally broader, targeted to populations with significant barriers to education and employment. Starting with Douglas College, where I'm seated now. There's two aspects here that Douglas College meets criteria for. One is a self-contained classroom, and the other is on-site support. I'm going to come back to GBS in a few minutes. Douglas has an amazing resource for people of any age who are wanting to return to or start in an academic program or career program in a post-secondary institution. So this is Essential Skills for College, a course that has been offered for 25 years, and it's been obviously a highly successful initiative to get people into college. This preparatory course is designed to assist adults with mental health disabilities develop the skills to be successful college students. The course will cover academic study skills, orientation to college, learning strategies, and assist students to develop an educational plan. What's unique about this course? A few things. One, that it's been around and funded so long, so it's obviously been a great success. And part of the reason for that is likely because it is for credit. Students participating in this course for a term receive academic credit and can use that towards undergraduate career programs at college. And this course was actually the subject of the last webinar, which was presented on February 10th. And hopefully some of you saw that. So this was Dr. Maria La Quinta, a registered psychologist, also the coordinator for the Center for Students with Disabilities, and Jenny Cashmore, who is an occupational therapist with Fraser Health. So this is an excellent program for those who live in Fraser Health. It is limited to Fraser Health catchment, and my understanding is that it also has a capacity of 10 students per term. The other programs at Douglas are available to all, and I myself have connected some of my clients over the years to these programs on the two campuses. The Vocational Education and Skills Training Program has been around even longer, I think almost 50 years, maybe even longer. So essentially, it trains people with disabilities or barriers to education and employment in various occupational pursuits, sometimes giving them groundwork for some of these programs, the career and employment preparation. We actually have a client at Gastown who went through that program and came back to Gastown for some additional support with the employment piece. The skills training piece I just want to highlight because from the website you wouldn't know that basic occupational education actually is 3 programs, and they're all excellent. One is food services training, the other retail, and the other is electronic assembly. And these are self-paced programs, highly flexible. Yes, they're just next door to us. People generally complete them in 8 to 10 months. It could take a little less, it could take a little longer. And the last on this list as well, the phone number, 527 jobs, actually refers to supported employment piece, which is attached to the program. And this is support for when people have completed the in-classroom and the work experience, because those are provided as well with the training. Then they can meet with an employment counselor and find a job in the field. And highly successful initiative again. from Douglas College. Program models. Back to our program models. Now we see that Gastown Vocational Services covers off the other two, which is a program that is freestanding and offering mobile support. And of course, a big part of our role is connecting our clients to opportunities such as Douglas College, where they will have classroom learning, work experience, training, and on-site support. But we also have our own initiatives, so I'll talk about more of those in a few minutes. And interestingly, of course, they do match up quite nicely with the core components of supported education, because Gastown was developed from these principles and components and the whole menu. So we do offer career planning, which includes vocational assessment, career exploration and development, and education plans, academic survival skills such as time management, stress management, study skills, and academic accommodations, connecting to services such as tutoring. Some of this is done in conjunction with disability services at the various institutions. We provide direct assistance with students getting enrolled and applying for and obtaining financial aid and managing debt. An issue. Our outreach piece, of course, is mainly about connecting with campus resources. But we also connect people back in with mental health treatment teams, keeping them in the loop, and sometimes other agencies are involved as well. Some of our clients have various programs, such as clients who are connected to Ministry of Family and Children's Development. So we do stay connected. Where should these services be provided? Well, we have educational institutions and we have mental health programs. And while these were originally considered separate implementation models, recent literature suggests that most programs offer flexible services tailored to consumers' needs in the different locations. And as I've illustrated, they can work really nicely together as well. So where can these services be accessed? This isn't always apparent. There's quite a variety of access points. One is healthcare. All of the mental health teams, both for child and youth and adult services, will have some connection or be able to connect clients to these services. And then that includes early psychosis programs across the region. We have tertiary, which are inpatient and longer stay residential treatment facilities, Fraser and Vancouver Coastal. So often there are occupational therapists and peer support, maybe even employment specialists who are working with clients. And we have a few and far between specialized services, such as Gastown's Youth and Young program. Also under the umbrella of healthcare are agencies, because they do receive funding from health authorities and often from private donors as well. And an example of that is the YMCA Youth Meet, which is connected to inner city youth, which is funded through Providence Healthcare. These programs are specialized for mental health and working with youth and young adults. The focus is primarily training for most of the agencies. Then we have our educational institutions. All of the post-secondary institutions in Lower Mainland and BC would have disability services on campus, and most of the community colleges would have specialized programs for students with disabilities and other barriers to education and training and employment. So that was what I referred to with the Douglas College in-classroom programs. These are not specialized for mental health, but they can certainly be appropriate. And the focus is more education and training with employment support attached. And there are more places where services can be accessed. Employment centers, now all falling under the umbrella, most falling under the umbrella of Work BC. So WorkBC has specialist employment counselors embedded at all of their sites across the province. In a few situations, they are subcontracted programs targeting people with disabilities. GBS is an example of that, as is the BC Centre for Ability. The focus of the employment centres, of course, is employment and training, and not necessarily specialized for mental health. We have also one-stop youth centres, and an example of that is the Broadway Youth Resource Centre, which falls under an agency, PCRS. These are funded by government and private donors, where they offer a range of services and generally including high school completion, skills training, and employment services as well. These are not specialized for mental health, but there is certainly opportunity to take some of these clients who are using these services and stream them to something like YYAP. There's a connection there, for example, between Broadway Youth Resource and PCRS and getting specialized training for their clients through USBEAT. We do have some practice considerations. As with all models, we tend to have program drift just based on the reality of our practice environments, our funding models, funding constraints, which create time constraints. Wait lists, of course, are part of the time constraint and the need for wait lists, so that we do need to limit services. Gastown, our time constraints are manageable.
Your voice cuts in and out, so we're just going to come a little closer.
Oh, thanks, Regina.
Yeah.
I hope that's better. So we do have some inconsistencies and gaps in services just as a result of having many players in education and employment, institutions and funders. Of course, everybody strives to provide seamless integrated services, but we do have time constraints based on funding and so on. So we can't always follow somebody as long as we would like, and we do have a wait list, although it's quite manageable at the moment for our service. There's also some potential for service overlap, and that is really, for our service, just a natural outcome of connecting people to other services as we do. So that when we connect people to disability services at a college or university and they're starting academic or career programs there, then we're going to stay involved with it just to make sure that sticks and they're getting their needs met, and eventually phasing out service, and they will continue to receive services through disability services at their post-secondary institution. And the same with job training programs. We connect people up and stay involved for a bit just to make sure that that's working out, that sticks, and then pass the baton. Some examples of when things don't go as planned. Of course, people start programs and decide, for me, fortunately, they can usually withdraw without penalty with medical withdrawal. Sometimes it just takes a long time for people to kind of find their path. And I have an example of a client I worked with in my previous job. Met this young lady when she was 19, and she was actually taking a term off from Langara. She hadn't been able to kind of get through her courses, and I started working with her. We started on just building her readiness to go back. She was dealing with panic and anxiety. She did get back to campus, and at which point, when that was going well, I phased out, and a couple of years later, came back in when she wanted to start looking for employment, and working on that while attending school. And that was successful. So again, my program services were discontinued. And a few years later, she actually had transitioned by this point to SFU to complete her undergraduate degree. And she had a relapse, and she was getting stuck again. She was taking all of her courses online from home and not making it to campus. Was able to reactivate the service and work with her to get her back on track, and now she's attending classes.
So flexible. That's great.
So this, in an ideal world, would happen for all of our clients who need that level of service over the years. But the reality is people have to kind of come back into different services at different times and different care providers. So when you set out on your academic journey, you don't anticipate it might take 6 or 7 years, but sometimes it does to get to where you want to be. Well, we know that these programs are effective, and we have lots of evidence to back that up. We have studies that show supported education programs lead to more access to and participation in educational programs, increased competitive employment, improved self-esteem, reduced hospitalization, and increased consumer satisfaction. And as mentioned, refer back to Regina and Simon's summary of the research from January 26th. So before we go to questions and discussion, we're just going to highlight a couple of client journeys. I will begin with Jack and then hand it over to Chris. So this is a client who started with Gastown Vocational Youth and Young Adult Program at age 17. A young man who'd had difficulty getting through high school and attending a self-paced program, taking a couple courses to finish off his adult diploma. So this young man has a history of mood disorder and ADHD and some learning difficulties. So as he progressed with our service, he started working right away with a job developer, which is often where we begin. He did obtain his adult high school diploma along the way, and then felt ready to trial work, which we do with our work experience placements, which are 3 months in duration, unpaid, and pretty low key. So he started a few hours a week, once a week at a dog daycare, always a popular choice for a first work experience placement. And he completed that and decided he actually wanted to get a little more experience with customer service. So at that point, he was placed at Cineplex, completed that successfully within 3 months. And the supervisor thought he was ready for paid employment at this point. Unfortunately, they didn't have a position for him. So he continued to work on his work readiness skills, attending our Work Ready group, which focuses on building some skills for selling yourself and your skills to employers, and especially interview skills. And he did successfully land his first job as a production line assistant in food services. After a few months of that, he really wanted again to focus on the customer service. And our job developer suggested the baristas training, which is a partnership between Starbucks and the PCRS, which trains youth in skills for working in Starbucks and coffee shops and food services industries. So he is 6 weeks into that program. He's done very well, completed the classroom and piece of it, and moved on to a placement at a Starbucks. He's now training as a barista. So what he has accomplished in his client journey to date has been high school diploma, paid work experience, skills for job search, and skills for customer service. And those are going to carry him right through his whole working career, and just generally more skills. So this is kind of a typical journey for somebody who takes the route of employment and skills training. And now I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk about Jill's journey.
We're just going to pop out the visual here because Chris will take over. So go ahead, Chris.
Hello, sorry. Right, so
no problem. I know it takes a moment to get your mic up and running, so no problem, Chris. So thanks kindly.
Thanks, Regina. So the client that I was going to speak to, I think it's on the next slide, Erin. Oh, no, there it is, Jill. Right, so she came to us after dropping out of she finished high school and went straight into Langara College full-time and experienced relapse in her mental health and had to drop out of Langara College. She was working still with the child and youth mental health team think she was about 18 years old, and was referred to us. She wasn't too sure what she wanted to do at that point. It wasn't clear if she was going to go back to school. She knew she wanted to get into some employment, and the mental health issues she was experiencing was mainly depression and OCD. So we started off just by getting her ready for work, starting off with really gentle work readiness, doing resume and cover letter preparation, a little bit of exploration of what she was interested in. Then she started a competitive work search. She'd worked a little bit in her life before and thought she was ready to go straight into competitive employment rather than potentially doing a work experience placement. And she got a job pretty quickly working, I think it was in a doggy daycare kind of situation. However, this was very triggering for parts of her OCD, so we did quite a bit of wellness for work planning and really just making a plan to keep her well when she was at work. She knew that long term this wasn't what she wanted to do and was pretty motivated to go back to school. Her counselor had queried before that she had some executive functioning issues and wasn't really sure how realistic her goals were of going into like completing a bachelor's degree and potentially even doing a master's degree, which what she was talking about. Fortunately, we were able to get her in with a psychologist for psych ed. It was more of a psych ed assessment, and that really clarified that she did have quite good academic capacity, and with the right accommodations in place, she had good potential to succeed in post-secondary. So there was recommendations for accommodations made, and with that, she re-enrolled in Langara. We helped her register with disability services at Langara, and the psych voc assessment was really helpful for that. At this point, she knew that she wanted to go to Langara, and she started taking courses part-time again, which was really helpful for her. She was still working, I think, a few days a week and going to school. She was taking 2 courses, and it went relatively okay. It was a lot to take on, but she knew financially it wasn't going to be something that she was going to be able to fund, and she was worried about taking out a huge student loan. She did qualify for the Permanent Disability Program application, which we helped her apply to, and got the paperwork through, and she was approved for that, so that took some of the financial stress off her, and she actually left her job, deciding that she was going to focus on school and went into school full-time, and after being in school full-time for 1 semester, relative success, she was discharged from GVS after about a year and a half. So that's the story for that, and I'll go back to you, Erin.
Okay, I think we're ready for questions and discussion.
So thanks for that, Chris, and thanks, Erin, for a wonderful preparation. I know you spent a long time making that happen, so thank you very much. I know you're very thorough in your preparation, both of you, so thank you very much for that. So I guess what we're saying is we're welcoming questions, but I really appreciate that overall sort of big systems picture you provided for us, and I suspect that if somebody's new to this employment role, that it's probably very helpful to be able to think about where can people begin to access support, and if you happen to be a family member, perhaps there's some little gems in there for you in terms of where to go look for support. So I see that a couple of people are typing, and maybe just if you have questions for particular people, maybe just let us know. But the first question comes in from Taylor, who said, what happens when the client's goals don't align goals with the goals set by OT? Oh, that's a super question, and I'm not sure, Erin, if you want to tackle or begin to tackle that one, and then we can see if Chris has anything to add, but it's definitely a great question. Thank you, Taylor.
Very good question. We are client goal driven at Gastown Vocational. We make suggestions and see where they land. So we really have no agenda. Whenever I'm working with a client, I have no agenda. It's really, if whatever you want to start with, if we can be helpful to you, we'll help you find some answers. We'll help you explore what's of interest to you.
Well, definitely, that seems to be a best practice in PSR and recovery. So I'm not sure that all people in their designations have the opportunity for that kind of flexibility, but it sounds like there's a real window for self-directed care and building that sense of autonomy. So thank you very much for that response. Chris, at any time, if you have things you want to add, just shout, let us know. Valerie adds that, hello, under who are you, what, how would you describe consumer contractors? So I'm not sure if Chris or
I'm going to pass this over to Chris because we use contractors in very specific ways at GVS.
Yeah, so a consumer contractor at GVS is someone who has lived experience with a mental health issue, but not in the same way as a peer support worker who's gone through specific training and would be sharing their experiences with the client in sort of a clinical way to try and move them along in their own recovery. Whereas a consumer contractor would be someone who has lived experience, and it makes them, in a way, uniquely qualified to work in a mental health setting, but they're bringing something else to the table. Like our consumer contractor, our consumer contractors at GVS, one is a computer instructor who has special skills in, teaching basic computer courses, and the other is a psychometrician who he's really great at administering batteries of assessment for psychologists and OTs, kind of as needed.
thanks for that, Chris. Lois asks another question about, I think, really in response to providing services in outlying areas, but she asks, are there online courses available for clients in those outlying, so I guess outside the Vancouver region? She would like to take that up.
Well, that's a really interesting question. These services are very individualized. However, we do have work readiness programs, and something like that might have some definite potential to being offered. Really interesting question. I'm not aware of that anything currently, but maybe Chris might be.
For outlying areas, I do think that Work BC is obligated to provide some sort of support. It depends how outlying, though. Just like, for example, there'd be a site in Kamloops and a site in Kelowna, but probably not in smaller towns than that. And the Work BC services are supposed to provide specialized mental health services that they can subcontract that can do some supported education work, but it's with an end goal of employment. So it'd be shorter term supported education than, say, like a bachelor's degree. It would be kind of in that realm of 2 years.
So Lois, you may have identified a new area of practice there.
Mm-hmm.
I know with telehealth and so forth, we do a lot of online programs and a lot of outreach in terms of psychiatry services, but that's very much new to me if they were on support opportunities in that way. But that's seems to be a really important thing that I've honestly never thought about before. So thanks for bringing that issue forward. Valerie adds, would a specialized tutor fit in there as a consumer contractor regarding online courses? My experience is that they can be difficult, without that one-to-one support or that tutoring kind of thing. So I'm not sure if you have comments.
Well, I agree. I've assisted people kind of not with the content so much, but the process of tackling those online courses. And I agree that there's a lot of potential there for having some support to get through.
I kind of concur with that. So as somebody who actually teaches online, I know that even as somebody who's teaching, sometimes I need a lot of support and just to be able to craft a course content. And I know that at least here at Douglas College, we have a wonderful CIT support team who help me and are available to students as well. But I think, Valerie, you're also pinpointing some other things that a peer might be able to help a person just in terms of that emotional support or maybe some goal setting or just an opportunity to just help people one-on-one. So thanks for bringing that as well. Leanne adds, with the work placement program, how many positive outcomes have you had? Positive meaning, have they had found employment?
Pass the baton to Chris for this.
Yeah, I think the answer is loads. We do quite a few here. So we typically do be a work experience placement, and this is where basically someone's going in unpaid to learn the job. And Gastown Vocational Services has several of these that we've set up with different employers that are willing to take on our clients. And I'd say a reasonable chunk of them do get hired. something like 50% would be my like just shot in the dark at it. Yeah. So I guess of 20, probably 10 would find employment out of it, and I think that would be a realistic estimate for what we provide in a year.
That's really helpful, Chris. Thank you. You're obviously the systems man, so thanks for that. That's really great. Nadine asks, do you have a specific tool or assessments that you find helpful to support young people in exploring their interests or aptitudes for work or education? Thanks for that question, Nadine. You're right at the practical application, so thank you.
We do have a number of assessments that we use. I don't want to limit myself to just what is done at GBS, though, because I've also worked in other capacities in mental health for 14 years. So there are a number of tools that are accessible, inexpensive tools. I'm just going to give you a suggestion there for GIST. It's JIST. GIST is an educational provider in the US, and they provide really comprehensive assessments that are inexpensive. You can get freebies. They're easy to administer. I suggest anybody looking for a resource start with GIST. That's a big shout out to them because I've used their resources. And what we use at Gastown does require some a little more work in the sense that it's a battery of assessments. We have a psychometrician to do the total tallying up and so on and interpretation. So it's a bit of work. So I would what we use at Gastown is Career Assessment Inventory, CAI. That's one, and there's also a values assessment, and yes. There's a couple others. Chris, help me out here.
Yeah, the GAPI, the aptitude test that we use,
The GAP.
and the Myers-Briggs as well, and a couple other ones. I think what's important is to get a comprehensive assessment, and it depends what capacity you know the client in. Like if you're working with them in a different service, I mean, really knowing them is the most important thing. And then when you're pulling together the information, just to think about it in like a structured way, like how does mental health create barriers to employment, and then thinking about their employment history, and then thinking about their interests and their aptitudes, and really pulling all that together and using clinical reasoning to make some kind of strong suggestions of what's reasonable, and identifying along the way what accommodations are important.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't do the battery of assessments with everybody. Not everybody needs them. Some people just know they want to get straight to work. So in that case, we do this specifically for people wanting to do some career exploration. Perhaps they're looking at post-secondary programs or obtaining some skills training funds.
So great questions, great answers. And just to keep on going, Perminda, just a thank you for those kind words. Taylor asks, in addition, I think a question that's probably close to many people's heart in terms of the percentage of people who find meaningful employment. So when we look at the literature, sometimes we see that people get entry-level jobs, which is a really fantastic start. But I think you're getting at the core of something really vital there, Taylor, when you ask that question. And I'm not sure you may have those answers, but I'm not sure if you can shed light on that either, Chris or Erin. I guess the question is what percentage of people are gaining meaningful employment? And I'm not saying that entry-level jobs are not meaningful employment for people. They absolutely are. But I think the focus in the literature has often been on job acquisition, and that we're just recently, maybe more recently, thinking about that meaningful component.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, this really speaks of the need to combine the supported education with supported employment initiatives, because it gives people the opportunity to look at their skills, their aptitudes, their interests, and look at careers that may match those, and really do a comprehensive exploration of what's out there in terms of training, career programs. So we're taking it beyond the basics when we add supported education to supported employment models.
Super answer.
Good question.
Good answer too. I think it's just such it's an important I guess development of the field, isn't it? Because like I say, an entry level job is just such an important start for many people when we really consider the percentage of people who are living with significant mental illness who really don't have the opportunity to get a job, that it's a great start. But I love that we're trying to push the field a bit to really begin to ask those questions about meaning and purpose within for people, and the career pathway, I think, is what you're also talking about, Erin, that just because it's a good start, but where are people going in the long term? So thank you kindly. Valerie adds, I agree, Regina. It takes a long time to work towards meaningful employment. One of my favorite quotes, that a career is not put on like a coat, it grows on you organically as you go through life. Oh my word, I want one of those organic coats. That's really cool. Thank you, Valerie, for that. Great. So it's 11:27. We have another few minutes if people have any more questions. And Taylor, you're just asking for the percentage there, so I'm not sure, Chris, if you're able to give us a sense of that, or maybe the psychometrics are not geared toward that at this point. But I guess Taylor's just trying to pin us down there with a percentage.
That's tricky.
Good for you. I like your
The
tenacity.
nice thing about Gastown Vocational Services is it doesn't really use well, I shouldn't say it's a nice thing, but I mean, we've moved a little bit away from the IPS model, which would be train in place and then potentially discharge. We work on the adult team with people, like we're supposed to be doing follow-ups up to 36 weeks. So we are following them and trying to help people stay employed for up to 36 weeks. And if they need it, we can even keep them on for 48 weeks. So it is long-term employment. The quality of the employment in terms of dollars an hour is a really tricky one to quantify. I would suggest that our general employment rate is pretty in line with typical IPS, which would be about 60 to 80%. And then, like I said, we're doing the follow-up and keeping people until they're stably employed. There is a certain drop-off rate that probably isn't accounted for, where people might engage with the program, get a job right away, an entry-level job, and then they just kind of disengage with Gastown Vocational Services. So we're not really sure what happens to those people. It's quite hard to track. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, and I guess, dollars per hour is one way to manage or to consider meaningful employment, and I expect there are many other ways as well in terms of contributing or to your community, or even feeling part of your community, a sense of citizenship. So lots of different ways to look at those components of meaningfulness, right?
I actually also think it depends on what skills you want to use. And we have the example of the young man who was working production line assistant in food services, but he really wanted to work with customers. So he went back for more training, and will he make more money? Not necessarily, but he may have more jobs.
Right. That's a good point. So Parvin asks, how long do you follow up with a client?
This really varies for the youth and young adult program. We don't have a strict time limit. To discharge somebody who was followed by the program for 3 years. But more typically, we'd work with a person for about a year to achieve their goals and feel solid.
And that in itself is quite a different approach to IPS, isn't it? It's really quite a robust sense of being able to follow somebody.
Yeah, there'd be quite a variation in that, of course.
Right.
Some people would see for a few months, but more often people do need longer. That age,
right,
who have little or no work experience, they do need longer term.
And this might seem a strange question, but I expect if you're able to follow people for a year, it must really contribute to your own job satisfaction. At least maybe I'm just implying that's implied, but
that's a very big attraction of working
right
at GVS.
Yeah. It's nice to see people learn, grow, and maybe take some risks and try new things. And that, for many of us, it takes some time, right, to try on those different coats, to use that metaphor, or different hats. Chris, I'm not sure if you have things to add as well.
Something I can just speak to that I didn't pipe up with was the first question around when clients' goals don't meet those of the therapists. And GVS tries to be as client-centered as possible in working towards their goals, but especially in the adult program where we use a fee-for-service model, sometimes that does happen where clients have goals that we don't think are realistic and we're unable to truly support them in from the start. So something we try to take on is to really grade it and negotiate. Like, for example, if someone wants to do a skills training application, which would require basically the government to fund uh, education 2 years or less, going into something that labor market research suggests is quite employable. However, if they don't complete the program, GVS can end up on the hook for the money. So we obviously are very cautious about going into those situations. So when that happens, we would, try to have people demonstrate some readiness for skills training by perhaps doing a security guard course and finding some gainful employment in that first, or something related that they could do to show that they were ready to go into the education. And then if they could evidence to us over a few months that they were, meeting consistently and, following up the things that they were supposed to do, then we kind of go back to their goal and reevaluate it and hopefully be able to, move forward with it. That's all I had on that one. Sorry, nothing else to share, Regina.
That's great. Thank you. No, that's great. Taylor asks, I think, one of those good hearty questions. What are the negative sides with having a mandate simply of getting employment?
Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about an IPS model where that is the focus, there's obviously some negatives if people aren't ready, if they try and fail to obtain employment or maintain employment. They really need to develop some skills, not only around employability, but say life skills or skills to maintain their wellness, self-management skills. Then we are missing the opportunity to work with that. So people with recovery may have ups and downs. They may need some time away from their goal of employment. They may need to work on their wellness. They may want to do volunteer work or engage in community or build skills in different ways, as well as looking at careers and education and skills training options. So there's a whole host of supports and approaches that can assist somebody when they are interested in employment, but may not be necessarily entry-level employment that they're interested in. And they may want to work really on skill development. And part of those skills may be just managing loans for some people. I hope that answers your question.
Valerie asks, how can I get information into this field? An adult educator. She's a BA with adult ed, a tutor, math and English. I have lots of experience volunteering with people with mental health consumers and enjoyed it. So it sounds like, Valerie, you're keen to get into this field. And I guess you have two amazing experts with us today. So they're two good people to ask about that. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, our job developers come from a variety of backgrounds, including people who've done some work with it around education. So job development is certainly a field where you can have some, definitely some contact with supported education as well. People have sort of a dual role of doing both. So that would be one suggestion, to look at job developer training, which is available through colleges and certificate programs around Lower Mainland. Other suggestions, perhaps attaching to college and looking at whether you want to maybe develop your skills in the area of counseling. Lots of great opportunities through disability services and counseling services at colleges, all the specialized education programs that are here as well. Instructors as well as administrative and program staff. Those are just a couple suggestions I have.
I believe there's a Master's of Employment at UBC, Employment Counseling, and I understand Douglas College has a course for employment, and I actually don't know what that level is at, whether it's a diploma, it might be, I'm not sure, truthfully, but I guess you're suggesting maybe combing through some of the course content in different places to see where you might get some further education.
Yes, and in fact, you may be able to apply for job developer jobs at this point if you have some experience working with different populations who are receiving these services. Contracted employment programs across the province. Many of them are now administered through agencies, and they'd be a good place to start.
Good suggestion. Super. I see Leanne is doing a little bit of typing, so maybe that's a final question or comment, perhaps. Leanne says, what about volunteering with a program? Well, that's a good suggestion as well, isn't it, Leanne? Yeah, with a specific employment program.
Right, yeah. So I mentioned the agencies, and agencies are a wonderful place to start. And I don't know where you're located, but if you're in Lower Mainland, we have some large agencies that serve mental health populations, Coast being one of the key ones. CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association, another. CMHA is located all over the province as well, so that would be a good place to start.
It says we always accept volunteers at Coast Mental Health and with the culinary program. Oh, that's so great.
Excellent.
I'm glad that you're here with us today, Leanne. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So Taylor says thanks for the webinar, and maybe on that note, we will bid our due. We will say thank you very much for spending your morning with us. Please stay tuned for upcoming education opportunity from Fraser Health Authority. Also, we are working with UBC to do a particular webinar on some of the educational supports that they offer people in that context. So we're just figuring out dates and presentation times and so forth. So please stay tuned. Please do let us know what you think of this session. We will send out a link shortly asking you to tell us what you thought through an evaluation with your certificate. Thank you very much. Laura adds, thank you to everyone for a great webinar, and special thanks to the presenter for donating precious time and, of course, their knowledge and expertise. Absolutely. Thank you. I totally agree with that. Valerie says, thank you and goodbye. And we say thanks again for supporting your advanced practice. Please let us know if you would like to make any presentations yourself. Please contact me. You have my address. I'm going to ask Jen just to type it up. Please just let us know. kcr@douglascollege.ca. So please let us know. I know that many of you are doing just great work out there, and we really want to showcase your efforts. So thanks kindly. And with that, we'll say cheerio. We'll say sign off. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your efforts for coming to play with us today. Thank you. You know that this will be this is being taped, and it will be up on our website in within a week. So if there are parts of the slides, I know some of them people were saying they're just a little bit hard to read, but you'll have them for your leisure, and you'll be able to scroll through them with all the resources. So they'll be yours. So we look forward to that. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.